The glass wall. Think about the most confusing relationship you've ever had. Not the most dramatic one, not the one that ended badly, the most confusing one. Where you kept asking yourself, why do I feel so alone around this person? They're not cruel, they show up, they care in their way. But something's always a little off. Like there's a glass wall between you. You can see them, but you can't really reach them. For a lot of people, that person is their parent. And the disorienting part is, everything looks fine on the outside. They fed you, clothed you, paid for things. By most definitions, they were there. But emotionally, you were completely on your own. Psychologist Lindsay Gibson spent decades in private practice with people who grew up exactly like this. And the thing that kept coming up across all these different people, all these different families, was the same feeling nobody had a name for. Your parent can be physically present and emotionally absent at the same time. And that gap shapes everything. The loneliness no one talks about. The book opens with something Gibson calls emotional loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone, the loneliness of being with someone and still feeling unseen. Parents who are emotionally present do something that sounds unremarkable until you realize how many people never got it. They notice. They see the mood shift. They ask the follow-up question. They make a child feel their inner world is worth paying attention to. Parents who can't do this leave a particular mark. The child learns, quietly and without anyone saying it out loud, that their feelings are too much. That needing comfort is a burden, and that lesson doesn't stay in childhood. A person can build a career, a marriage, a whole functional life, and still carry that same background hum of isolation underneath all of it. How children adapt. Most emotionally immature parents don't look like obvious villains. Some are generous, funny, well-liked, which is part of what makes this so hard to name. There's a rigidity, one right answer, one right way. Push back and the temperature in the room drops. An inability to self-soothe. Small stressors become big reactions, and calming down happens through the people around them, usually the kids. And a failure of what Gibson calls emotional labor. The basic effort to wonder what someone else might be feeling. When confronted about it, the answer is always the same. You should have told me, as if noticing were optional. Gibson identifies 4 types. The emotional parent, whose moods run the whole household. The driven parent, always pushing, always interfering. The passive parent, warm, easy to love, but completely absent when protection was actually needed. And the rejecting parent, the wall. The one who made a child feel like an inconvenience from the start. Different surfaces, same result. A child who grows up not quite sure their needs are legitimate. Those children adapt. Internalizers turn the problem inward. They become hyper-attuned to other people's moods, more careful, more responsible. Competent on the outside, running on empty underneath. They carry what Gibson calls a healing fantasy. If I'm patient enough, loving enough, good enough, eventually someone will finally see me. The fantasy doesn't stay in the family. It migrates into every close relationship, the same program running with different people. The moment things crack. At some point, something breaks. A panic attack, a depression that won't lift, anger at a parent that seems completely out of proportion, until it doesn't. Gibson draws on Polish psychiatrist Dabrowski, who argued that psychological breakdown is often the beginning of growth. He called it positive disintegration. What's falling apart isn't the person, it's the old system, the one built to survive something that's no longer happening. One client spent years ashamed of her anger toward her parents. Then she said, "There would be something wrong with me if I weren't angry. My anger is coming right from my core." Another spent her life trying to make her mother happy, until the day she said what she'd never allowed herself to say. "I don't actually like her. I love her, but I don't like her." Naming it, she said, felt like finally being able to breathe. 3 tools. So what do you actually do with all of this? Gibson is direct. These parents probably won't change. The letters, the conversations, the carefully worded appeals, they usually don't land. Not because they were said wrong, but because the person receiving them doesn't have the capacity to take them in. She describes this with a sharp image. Asking an emotionally immature parent for genuine closeness is like handing a snake to someone with a snake phobia. It doesn't matter how meaningful it is to you. To them, it's a threat. What she offers instead is a practical framework called the Maturity Awareness Approach. 3 specific tools. Tool 1, detached observation. Before any difficult interaction, shift into observer mode. Watch what's happening as if you're an anthropologist in the field. Notice facial expressions, tone, body language, and describe them to yourself in words silently. Finding the exact words for what's happening redirects the brain away from emotional reactivity. You can't be swept in and narrating at the same time. If you feel yourself getting pulled in, repeat silently, detach, detach, detach. If that's not enough, find a pretext to leave the room. Not avoidance, a reset. And if guilt starts flooding in, count. How many seconds has this been going on? Look at a clock. Talk kindly to yourself. I haven't done anything wrong. This is their distress, not mine. Tool 2. Focus on the outcome, not the relationship. Before any difficult conversation, set a specific, achievable goal. Not, I want them to finally understand me. Something concrete. I want to tell my mother I'm not coming home for the holidays. I want my father to stop speaking that way to my children. I want to get through this dinner without a scene. The moment the goal becomes fixing the relationship, the moment you go in hoping for real emotional reciprocity, the thread is already lost. One warning, Gibson adds. If a parent suddenly becomes more open in response to this approach, be careful. That openness tends to evaporate the moment you lean into it. Stay in adult mode. Tool 3. Manage the interaction. Don't just react to it. You control the duration, the topic, the intensity. When the conversation drifts toward an emotional ambush, redirect politely, as many times as it takes. One client had a father who dominated every family gathering. At one visit, she noticed the seating was about to give him the floor. She moved her chair next to him before it happened. The dynamic shifted. Small move, specific outcome. Another was telling her father about a difficult time at work when he suddenly changed the subject. Instead of letting it go, she said, "Dad, I'm going to talk about me some more. I'm going through a hard time. Can you just listen?" He did. Expressing clearly what you need, without demanding a particular response, is what Gibson calls clear, intimate communication. It doesn't always work, but it works more often than staying silent. 3 deeper shifts. Beyond the 3 tools, Gibson identifies shifts that work at a deeper level. The first is recognizing the internalized parental voice, the inner critic that sounds like your own thoughts, but isn't. It's an echo of early caretakers. The way to work with it is the same as with the actual parent. Observe it. Don't automatically believe it. When it says you're lazy, selfish, too much, ask whether that's actually true, or just familiar. The second is giving up excessive empathy. Internalizers often suffer more for other people than those people suffer for themselves. Gibson asks a sharp question. Does this person actually want to feel better? Because sometimes the answer is no. Their whole identity is organized around not getting what they want. Caring about someone doesn't require taking on their suffering as your own. The third is self-compassion, which for internalizers is genuinely difficult. One of her clients looked back at a childhood photo of herself and said, "You brave girl. You're smiling for the picture, but you had so much to deal with." That moment of recognition, seeing the child you were and feeling something for them, is one of the most healing things the book describes. Not a technique, just honesty. A second life. Near the end of the book, Gibson writes about what she calls a second life. Not starting over, not erasing what happened, just getting to finally be the person who existed before learning to be something else for someone else's sake. One of her clients says, "I now know exactly who I am. Other people aren't going to change, but I can change." The book is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson. It came out in 2015, and it's still at the top of the psychology charts, which says something about how many people needed someone to name this. Couple words about us. Finding time to read isn't always easy. There are many books, and it's hard to know which ones are worth your time. Would you like to read more, but struggle to make it a regular habit? When life gets busy, choosing what to focus on isn't simple. Key Briefs introduces you to the core ideas of popular and influential books. Each episode helps you understand what matters, so you can decide which books you want to read in full. Just 10 to 15 minutes a day is enough. Over a year, you'll get familiar with the key ideas of up to 365 books. Listen while driving, walking, or working out, and turn everyday moments into time for learning. Subscribe to the channel and keep learning at your own pace, choosing which books and ideas you want to explore next.